It's Thursday, July 20th, 2017. Our panelists today, Shannon Reeves, an assistant professor of political science at Alabama A&M, and political consultant Stan McDonald. I'm Dale Jackson. You're watching Yellowhammer Live TV. Welcome to Yellowhammer TV Live. We have a lot to discuss today. The repeal uncertainty continues in Washington, D.C., but there's plenty to talk about at home. Let's start off with Kay Ivey. She hits 100 days in office. Kay Ivey has been there, and her job right now appears to be steadying the ship. Nothing crazy happening with her as governor, and that seems to be exactly where she wants to be. Let's go to our panelists today. Shannon Reeves, assistant professor at Alabama A&M. Kay Ivey hits 100 days. There has been no scandal. There has been no chaos. This is probably exactly what the state of Alabama needs. Recently, a poll came out and said she is one of the more popular governors in the state right now, and maybe that's just because of what we saw before all of this. Why do you think she's coming off as so popular? Is it just less chaos? Is it that simple?
No scandal, no problems, no chaos makes her walk on water in today's political environment. Everyone's, it's crazy how with all the chaos in politics, when you find someone that's kind of just holding the steering wheel, not making any bad train wrecks or turns, is doing well. And so that's why she's coming off pretty good. Plus, I like her. She has this calming feeling, calming kind of persona to people as well.
Stan, we're operating in almost a different world here. You couldn't go a day without getting some sort of embarrassing headline from Governor Robert Bentley. Now you could go a week without even hearing the name Kay Ivey. She seems to be kind of operating behind the scenes. There's the idea between there's battleships in politics, people who are out there all the time making a bunch of noise, and then there's submarines. Right. She's very much operating as a submarine. I mean, yes, last week she shook up her office, but still that was just a little blip. Nothing huge here. Does Kay Ivey eventually have to become a bigger, more popular figure, or is this what we're going to see from her? Or not popular, excuse me, a louder figure, or is this what we're going to see from her?
I think it's what we're going to see from her. And by the way, Shannon, you notice that Bentley is still running interference for her. He made news twice this week.
The greatest ever.
He's the best governor by far ever. And if they'd have just left him alone. And so I think Kay, the thing, Dale, I like about Kay is this, and I think others like it. She is attractive to progressives in the sense that she's a female, an Alabama female governor, but she's plenty conservative, and so she's got a neat little mix. I think she keeps on her game, and I don't see her moving off of it.
Shannon, low expectations? I mean, I'll just be completely honest with you. Nobody expected Kay Ivey to run for governor. If Robert Bentley rode this thing out, had he survived all the way through this, nobody was going to say, yeah, Kay Ivey, she's the next one. So there's low expectations right now. Is that part of this?
I don't know about low expectations as much as it is actually that's her persona and how she's functioning right now. And just think about it. With all, again, at the national level, you have here in the state, you have legislators being indicted. You have chaotic fist fights in city council meetings going on. If you look at politics as it stands now, to have a calming figure, that grandmotherly approach, right, with wisdom, not necessarily being too old, but having wisdom, having been experienced. She talks about having a great relationship with working with the legislature. So if you want to pull from another politician, Governor Ann Richards in Texas, and what her appeal was, I see kind of a similar appeal with Kay Ivey as the Republican.
Do either of you expect a special session of any kind? Taxes, roads, gambling, prisons, any of that? We'll go first to you, Stan. Do you expect any type of special session at this point?
I would not anticipate one.
Shannon? I mean,
no.
Do you none from you either? I don't think so either. Is she running for re-election, Shannon?
She hasn't said she's not running for re-election, so I would say yes.
Yeah, my thought is if you don't say that you're not running for re-election, you're probably running for re-election. All right, staying here in the state of Alabama, but of course there are those national implications. Congressman Mo Brooks last week said that he would filibuster in order to get Trump's wall built. And then today he said, let's do away with the filibuster. And something he had said a while. We had brought that up last week on the show. Stan, how does he filibuster something if he ends the filibuster? I mean, is this a contradiction, or is he saying I'm going to operate within the rules as they are?
It's not a contradiction. In other words, even if they change the filibuster rule to make it a straight 50, it's not going to do away with the filibuster altogether. Okay, it's just not. And you know, of course, right now, to break a filibuster, you have to have 60 votes. And what Mo wants is it would only take 51 votes, I suppose, to break a filibuster. So he would still filibuster. What you're going to see, by the way, Dale, coming up is you know, this new spending bill that's going to originate in the House of Representatives here in a few weeks this fall. It may well be that the Freedom Caucus is going to do this very same thing. You may not see a bill come out of the House of Representatives this fall. If the Freedom Caucus holds together, they're 25 or 30 members, then...
Well, you know, it's funny the way that this would break out, because if we're talking about the wall and we're talking about the filibuster here, he can still filibuster. It would just require that people go on the record and say, I don't want the wall. I mean, and break that filibuster. So he could obviously still do this. Shannon, this is happening right in the middle of a campaign. You have these things happening. Congressman Brooks has made it clear where he stands on these issues before. Let's start with the filibuster, though. We have Trump saying, let's do away with it. The Democrats, when they win, if they win, I mean, let's assume they're going to win at some point in time here in the near future. If they win, the filibuster's going away anyway. We saw Harry Reid chip away at it, and then in order to get Gorsuch, you saw Mitch McDonald chip away at it. The next step is obviously to do away with this 60-vote requirement. This is coming anyway. At some point in time, filibuster's going away. We're moving in that direction, right?
I think that's the unfortunate part about our politics today. I think people forget politics is the art of persuasion and the art of compromise. If you get all that you want all the time, that's not politics. You know, it requires having the skillful ability to bring people on the other side of the aisle across. And that's the way our system has operated. It's unfortunate. Now, as far as Congressman Brooks, he's playing the game the way the game is being played, but he's also articulated the way he would like it to be if he had his choice.
You know, I always say this phrase and people get on me, but it ain't no fun when the rabbit's got the gun. I mean, that's the reality. And if the Republicans do away with it and Democrats take power, they're going to have to deal with those consequences of that, too. So would you suggest they do this, Stan? Would you say go down this path?
Well, it's tough. It's a tough way to go, Dale, but no, I think they need to do it. I agree with Congressman Brooks on it.
Okay, well, let's move back, or stay in Washington, D.C., but deal with an old Alabama friend. Apparently, Donald Trump is not too happy with former Senator Jeff Sessions, now the AG. His problem is that he recused himself in the first place, reportedly told the New York Times, had I known he was going to recuse himself, I would have picked somebody else. Again, this all is about Trump and Russia. Again, the story that never ends, and it just continues. And Trump says things that don't look. If I knew they were going to pull themselves back and someone else was going to be looking at me, I'd have picked someone else that wouldn't have recused himself. Shannon, why is Trump saying this? Like, what is the I mean, in politics, you game out stuff and you try to figure out how do I best politically capitalize on this. This just, again, makes it look like, well, if I could, I'd squash this, and that doesn't look good.
Well, look, as a political scientist, this is great theater. I mean, this is good stuff, right? How does this affect people? How does this affect the voters? I mean, total chaos is always something to watch. Would you say, Stan? But what would make this actually great would be just Sessions to say, you know what? You're right, Mr. President. I'll step down. I'm going on home to Alabama, and I'm going to get in the governor's race. You know? That'll make it fun for us also here. You know?
Yeah, Stan, when we hear about this, that Trump is upset that he picked him or he would have picked somebody else or he didn't want him to recuse himself, I mean, we are seeing a pattern here of self-destructive behavior. And again, I voted for Trump. I want him to succeed, but it's self-destructive. The stuff with Comey was self-destructive. Comments like this are self-destructive. A meeting with Putin that you don't disclose to the press until you're busted on it, that where only Putin's interpreter is there, is self-destructive. The information about Don Jr.'s stuff is self-destructive. On top of all of this, the media hates him. I mean, let's just be real here. They hate him. They're gunning for him. We all know that. But this is still self-destructive stuff.
You know, Dale, I've wondered when you and I would disagree, and I'm not ready to all out disagree with you yet on this. But what I would say on Donald Trump is one thing we've learned: you have to wait 3 or 4 or 5 days for it to play out. He'll do something, and you'll think he's finally killed himself here. He's obviously destroyed himself, and then the shoes start dropping 4, 5, 6 days later, and all of a sudden he ends up not in as bad a position as you might have originally thought. So I'm not outright disagreeing with you, but you know, the guy, he has made a living off of doing things the wrong way politically. I like to talk about quarterbacks sometimes who break all the rules, but yet they're still great, like a Brett Favre or someone like this. He breaks every political rule in the book, and I think because you have an angry electorate right now or what all the dynamics are, nevertheless, his guys do stick with him, Dale.
Yeah, when you started talking about quarterbacks making bad decisions, Brett Favre was the first one that popped into my into my head too, because you know, I think that's actually a pretty good way to look at it. Brett Favre played recklessly. I mean, he really did. He would run around, and he was just a reckless guy, and he'd throw a lot of interceptions, but he would still win. And I guess that would probably be the Donald Trump equivalent here. Shannon, if we look at this long term, as Stan is saying, is there a method here?
Well, I don't know if there's a method. I think it's Trump being Trump.
Okay.
However, to use the Brett Favre analogy, he didn't also come out and say that his best receiver couldn't catch, and he wished he was on another team. Okay, so the problem here is, I mean, you know, Sessions is a grown man. Has been doing this a long time. Is very experienced. So Sessions has to make a determination, you know, how he feels about being in a place that maybe it may or not be.
You know, the way you're framing this, Shannon, it leads me to believe that you think there's a possibility that Sessions is on his way out the door.
Absolutely.
You think that?
Absolutely. Absolutely. Because he doesn't. See, Sessions doesn't need the job. Sessions got the job because it's a place he wanted to serve, something he wanted to do. But when you were the first senator to commit to the president during the campaign, and now you're attorney general, and for the president to he's being himself, and I'm sure he's not saying anything that he hasn't told Sessions privately, but he comes out publicly and actually says this on the record.
This is amazing to me because, Stan, you're agreeing with this. You think that Sessions is going to walk away from something that he gave up a safe Senate seat for, and he's going to walk away before the Senate seat's even decided?
I think he's very close probably to doing that. The conversations that he was having last night and probably today are contemplating that very thing. But let me add on to you, Dale, right now. One of the things I think over the course of the next 3 to 5 days that may come out more and more, I'm not totally sold by any means that Sessions did need to recuse himself.
Well, I think that a lot of people ask that question. I think his interactions with the Russians were like shaking some guy's hand at the RNC. And I think Sessions, I think he's a true believer. I think he thought, well, Trump didn't do anything. I'll just recuse myself of this. And then it's like all this other stuff comes up. So I'd hate to see Sessions walk away. Let's move on to our last subject here in the first segment. It's sort of the same thing on the polling. Kamala Harris, a senator from California, and Donald Trump, they've done some polling here. Now, granted, here we are already talking about 2020. It never stops. Trump has been getting killed nonstop. I believe today is 6 months exactly.
Yes.
But he's been getting killed nonstop by the media. Kamala Harris, a darling. It was sort of one of these, she persisted when people told her to be quiet. Not the exact phrasing they used, but the same Elizabeth Warren, Hillary Clinton bold, that she's a strong woman standing up to mean old white men who are telling her to be quiet and sit down. 41-40. Trump's been getting massacred. She's been pumped up. 41-40 in these recent polls. A couple things. One, there's still some undecideds out there. I'm surprised so many people know who Kamala Harris even is. But without even a negative word said about her, she's only beating Donald Trump by 1%. One, does it matter? That would be question number one. Two, do these numbers surprise you, Shannon?
I don't know if they necessarily surprise me. This is the Democratic Party's trial balloon process. This is what they do early to put candidates out there to see kind of what it will look like. This is exactly what they did with Barack Obama, then state senator Barack Obama, by giving him a showpiece at the convention. That kind of they showcase those who are on their farm team coming up. So this is what they're doing. They're trying to see if she can handle prime time. How does she handle the pressure and the conversation about potentially being a candidate in the future?
Speaking of polls, I know people don't like them. Rigged polls, fake news, and all that other stuff. Stan, speaking of polls, we also have numbers that indicate that a majority of the electorate believe that the Democrats don't stand for anything except hating Trump. I mean, that's basically it. Is that impacting their ability to gain any traction on this? If they're just an anti-group as opposed to people offering up any ideas, does that matter?
Well, I think that's exactly. I mean, they prove every day that that's the reason that's theirs. That's the way the Democrats are behaving. They really don't stand for anything. They don't have any solutions right now. It is just an anti-Trump tirade. Does it matter? I mean, it's impacting Trump, but I think these polls right now in the presidential race in 2020 mean about as close to nothing as you can possibly.
I tend to agree with that, but I do still find it interesting that in all these polls, Hillary Clinton still polls worse than Trump. Kamala Harris is up 1 point. Democrats have no message. There's not just, as much as you would watch the media, you would think that there are people outside the door screaming for a Democratic majority in the House and in the Senate. And, it's an anti-Trump scream. That's all it seems like. It's anti-Trump, right?
Yes. I mean, Kamala Harris hasn't had an opportunity to do anything yet. So she's a figment of the Democrat imagination.
Okay, fair enough.
And they have to get her out there early. Because you understand, in California, my home state, she never had a major opposition run in California. She was the darling for the time she was a DA in San Francisco, all the way up to.
So she's there to draw fire.
Yes.
Okay.
She's there to draw fire and to toughen her up to get her ready.
Stan, last word.
What's scary about her though is for some reason she's become the darling of the Democrat National, and that means she's left, and all the more left. So she's their next Barack Hussein Obama in waiting.
All right, there we go. Stan, Shannon, thank you very much. Stay tuned. Coming up next on Yellowhammer TV Live, we'll talk a little bit about this health care debacle. John McCain, how long is he going to be away? How much does that change everything? We'll continue to discuss. Stay tuned. Welcome back to Yellowhammer TV Live. We continue with Shannon Reeves and Stan McDonald. Let's talk a little bit about this health care repeal. And if you can tell me where it stands right now, you'd be the first one to be able to figure it out. We watched a couple of interesting things happen over the last 24 hours. Repeal and replace is dead, then maybe repeal is dead. Then we watched John McCain has a medical issue. We don't know how long he's going to be gone, which takes another vote off the table, depending if they were able to get him over to where they wanted him to be. And then the President of the United States does something that I think is rather interesting. And you never see this. Before cameras and the man he's criticizing, he calls out Senator Heller from Nevada and says, does this guy want to go back? Does this guy want to go back? And all Heller can do is look at the camera, and you can see it right there, is look at the camera and kind of uncomfortably laugh. I mean, let's talk about winning friends and influencing people here. Shannon, this is abnormal. Is it effective?
Well, what I've learned in 25 years of politics is that you cannot inspire and insult at the same time. So if you're going to try to get someone on your team to support your issues, it's very difficult to be able to do it while you're insulting them.
Stan, if we're sitting here and you're advising a candidate, you're a political consultant, and Shannon, obviously you've worked on a lot of things as well, and you're sitting here and watching your guy do this. I mean, put yourself in you're advising Donald Trump, and he starts doing this. Do you immediately go, oh, my God, why? Or do you say, yeah, get him?
I hate to beat a dead horse, but look, this guy will break every rule in the book. And if I've heard of football coaches before trying to coach a guy and get him to stick with the plan, and sure enough, they go out there and they're running like a chicken with their head cut off, exactly opposite of what you told them to do, but they gain 50 yards, 60 yards. Look, I can't think of any more useless position than to be Donald Trump's political campaign advisor. He's going to do what he's going to do. And what you really have to do is spin and do damage control after he does it. So, no, I mean, it's ridiculous to do what he did. But he's in a time frame right now where he's getting away with things that you're not supposed to get away with.
All right, now let's look at it from the other perspective, Shannon. Let's discuss being on the other side of this. You're working on Heller's campaign. They're obviously concerned about that race and hanging on to that seat. And here's the President of the United States saying, hey, do you want to go back? And then hours later, a pro-Trump super PAC launches ads against him in Nevada. 12 hours after that, they pull the ads back and say, okay, we're not going to come after him now. If you're advising Heller, are you more likely after yesterday to go towards Trump's position or to harden in your opposition of a full repeal?
as Heller's consultant, you would tell him, trust your data. You have to trust. You have to have a good polling operation on the ground, people knocking on doors. You have to trust what the numbers say in your state. You can't get caught up in the hype of CNN and Fox News. What do our internal numbers say how we're doing? If the internal numbers say that you not being close to the president are hurting you, you then embrace the president and you ride with it. Or if you're doing well and you feel more comfortable in your position, you express to the voters, I support the president when I support the president, but I'm my own man. And in our state, we elect someone to be our own individual selves.
There's another alternative. Do what you said you were going to do. I mean, just be yourself. I mean, I guess at that
level.
I mean, yeah. I mean, just do what you said you were going to do. Own your position and let the chips fall where they may. Another interesting quote here, and Stan, I want to hear your thoughts on this. Any senator who votes against starting today is really telling America you're fine with Obamacare. I've watched over the last 48 hours Paul, Cruz, Lee, Heller, a couple others, all for different reasons. I've watched people say they own Obamacare, they own Obamacare, they own Obamacare, and they oppose it for different reasons. Yeah. I mean, this is the President of the United States saying either repeal, replace. I don't care, do something. If you don't, it's your fault. Is that fair?
No, I don't think that's fair. I think Obama, no, that's not fair. I think Trump's being kind of desperate. But I will say this, to me, the biggest thing that haunts them is just the fact that they voted to repeal back in 2015.
Yeah, that's exactly right.
They want to do the same darn vote.
If you vote yes and then don't do it now, you're a fraud. I mean,
makes you out to be just an absolute liar.
Yeah.
And there's one, Republicans have been taking the high moral mantle, these past 6 or 7 years and been the beneficiaries of it. And now they literally want, now not all of them, these five.
Yeah, these five guys.
Five. Yeah. And I don't think we need to broad brush them, but these five who voted 2 years ago and won't now, that's bad news.
Yeah, Lamar Alexander, a senator from Tennessee, said they don't even have 40 votes. I mean that to me, I think is another huge problem here with this. I mean, if they don't even have 40 votes, and the Democrats are basically saying, go. Well, hang yourselves, fight it out. I mean, what are they supposed to do?
Well, what's come out this morning, by the way, I don't know if you saw it or not yet, but it just came out a little bit ago, that they're talking now about leaving the Obamacare taxes in place, not giving the money to the deficit, and just doling out $200 billion to Medicaid expanded states.
Oh, yeah. Basically say if you're a blue state, do it. If you're a red state, do what you want. Yeah, I've seen that as well. One more segment left here on Yellowhammer TV Live. Stay tuned. Welcome back to Yellowhammer TV Live. Let's get to what's most important to us. What's the biggest story of the day? I'll go first here. I think the biggest story of the day is out of Colorado. $500 million in pot tax revenue. They've hit that finally, and they legalized, and they've got issues up there with this, with a whole myriad of things. But $500 million. Guys, $500 million. If you are looking at Alabama or another state and you have revenue issues, this seems like something that is appealing. Is it something you might want to do? Anyone shake their head? Yes, no? Is this something we should be looking forward to?
I don't think in Alabama anytime soon.
Okay. That's fair enough. Shannon, what do you think the biggest news of the day? What's your biggest story?
I have two.
Okay.
The first one, will Nevada turn the juice loose? O.J. Simpson's parole hearing.
All right.
Will they let him go? And will O.J. Simpson get out of jail sometime in October? The chances are very high that he will. The second one actually is the health of John McCain, Senator John McCain. I had the great opportunity to work for him in 2008 during the presidential campaign. And so my prayers really go out to John McCain.
Stan, real quick, what's the biggest story of the day?
Yeah, I know we've mentioned it, but it's got to be by far the biggest story is the whole idea about the Jeff Sessions recusal and Donald Trump's dissatisfaction with it. I think we're going to be talking about that for days now.
Okay. All right, fair enough. All right, let's move on to the closing argument. My closing argument today is pretty simple, and let me just be crystal clear about this. I ran into a bunch of people yesterday who tried to take my comments about Clayton Hinchman and his comments about Congressman Mo Brooks and tried to turn that into some sort of anti-vet screed. Let me explain something to you. I can respect your service. I can be thrilled with how you behave yourself in uniform, but I don't have to pretend that your comments are somehow above reproach because you put that uniform on. It is an absolutely absurd thing, and I've watched as liberal groups yesterday tried to draw me in to different groups that are veterans groups in order to pretend that it is completely absurd to even criticize someone who's a veteran over something related to the military. Let me explain this to you one more time. Your service is not a shield, and I will not sit here and hold fire on you because you have behaved honorably in the past. If you do not behave honorably, I don't care if you're a veteran or not, I'm going to hammer away on you, and it really is that simple. So Clayton Hinchman and his allies, they need to understand that his service, while admirable, is not something that is going to earn him any points